everybody. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were not here for that first segment, we just did a quick little recap of the Super Bowl, breakdown of some of the major plays that happened. In this second segment, we are going to take a look at some of the big shockwaves that were sent throughout the league since after the result of this Super Bowl. We'll talk about the legacy of Patrick Mahomes at just 28. We'll talk about what this means for the future of the 49ers and what this means for their legacy in particular. But if you would like to be a part of this show, and we would really appreciate it if you were, remember you can always send a little tip here by going to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. Again, that's streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork/tip. If you leave a tip, your question will be sent right here onto our overlay, and I will see your question and answer it right away. Remember, we appreciate all your donations and everyone for listening. But without further ado, let's get into the big results of the Super Bowl. Now, we kind of teased it a little bit in that first segment. Patrick Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. 3 Super Bowls in his first 6 years as a starter. He's already passed almost every single quarterback in Super Bowl wins. And he's just 28 years old. Along with that, you look at the numbers he's been able to put up. Multiple 5,000-yard seasons. 2 MVPs. 3 Super Bowl MVPs. That's 3 Super Bowl MVPs and 2 MVPs in 6 seasons. Not to mention his 50 touchdown season, and what he can do on the field is just so different than what we've seen from a lot of players in history. You look at a guy like Tom Brady, right now the kind of unquestioned GOAT. Maybe it's time to start that discussion, but for now, I don't think we're quite there. But maybe. You look at a guy like Tom Brady, who's won 7 Super Bowls, more than any team ever, all on his own. He obviously won 6 with Belichick in New England. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather. He's won 6 with Bill Belichick in New England, and that one once he moved down to Tampa Bay to get to 7. 7 Super Bowls is insane, but 3 at 28, and the path that the Chiefs seem to be on without much resistance, really. I mean, you have these incredible quarterbacks in the AFC. You have guys like Josh Allen. You have guys like Joe Burrow. You have guys like Lamar Jackson that just cannot beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. They can't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. There hasn't been anyone to consistently stop the Chiefs in the playoffs. And it's scary. It's scary to think how many rings this team can win. You see them get rid of a guy like Tyreek Hill, a finalist for Offensive Player of the Year this year, threatening 2,000 receiving yards. Something that has never been done before. If he had stayed healthy, he most likely would have hit that number. They get rid of him because he's asking for too much money and respond by winning not 1, but 2 straight Super Bowls. And probably opening this season as betting favorites to do it again. All season long, the Chiefs were talked about as a team that just didn't have the weapons. The receivers kept making drops, huge mistakes down the stretch of games that they just couldn't get over. Now, that defense was always incredible, top 5 in the NFL defense. But the offense, especially the receiving and the weapons, they just weren't there this season, and it did not matter. It really did not matter. They were still able to win a second straight Super Bowl really without much of an issue. You look at the 49ers and their path to get here. They played the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions, and in both of those games, they had to mount huge comebacks. In both of those games, if the other team hadn't had a kind of collapse in the second half, they wouldn't have been there. They were starting slow in every single postseason game. But the Chiefs, they steamrolled everyone. You know, the scores might have looked a little close against the Ravens and against the Bills, but there was never really a moment against the Ravens where it seemed like the Chiefs were going to lose that game. The Ravens just kept making mistake after mistake after mistake and never really felt like the Chiefs were in any danger of losing that game. Same thing with the Bills, and the Dolphins, they just steamrolled the Dolphins. They waltzed through these playoffs like it was nothing. In probably their weakest team in the Patrick Mahomes era, and they did it with ease. It's scary to think about what this team can become if they do get a weapon. What can Rashee Rice develop into? He's a solid guy right now, but as a rookie, what can he turn into in his second year? What if they go out and they get a guy like T. Higgins? What if they go out and get this huge receiving target? I doubt they will. But what if they do this? Can they keep this defense together? Can they keep this team together? Is Patrick Mahomes in the GOAT conversation? I think it's completely fair to have that conversation with him, just because of what he's done. He's already climbing up the leaderboards. He's top of the NFL history boards in passer rating, touchdown to interception ratio, or he's flirting with the top up there. He just doesn't make mistakes. And if you don't make mistakes and you are as elusive as he is, he was the leading rusher in that game for the Chiefs. And, aside from that big 19-yard run down the end, he didn't really make that many big runs, but he has 80 yards rushing. He has an incredible game. I don't know, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Leave a comment here. Should he be in that GOAT conversation? Or do you think he is at this point? What is it going to take for him to get there? I was talking to some people, and they really like to point to rings. Tom Brady has 7. He's the GOAT. He's not even close yet. But it's something special about what Patrick Mahomes is doing. He's got that Mahomes magic, On the 49ers sides of things, this loss should not be put on Brock Purdy. He played a great game. It wasn't an elite game. It wasn't a game you're going to look at 5 years down the future and be like, wow, Brock Purdy in losing a Super Bowl effort was amazing. It's not going to be like that, But he played fine. He didn't make any mistakes. And in a 49ers offense that's built the way it is, with Debo and McCaffrey and Kittle and Ayuk and Trent Williams on the offensive line, and that defense as built as it is, that's really all you usually have to do. What I will pin this loss on is the coaching staff for not preparing the team in overtime, really. We talked about a little bit in that first segment, Kyle Juszczyk saying that he didn't know, and many other 49ers did not know the rules. They did not know the new overtime rules, which is frankly just unexcusable. You can talk about some questionable coaching decisions, kicking that field goal. That's a questionable decision. Taking the ball first in overtime, that's a questionable decision. But not having your guys know the rules in the Super Bowl is inexcusable. That's not something that you can do with 2 weeks of preparation, with being the Super Bowl favorites coming in. These rules are not a year old. These rules have been in place for a couple years. This is not something that Kyle Shanahan and the rest of his staff should be let off the hook easy for. This is something that should be questioned. It's not a fireable offense because Kyle Shanahan is so good. But if any other coach that wasn't at the level of Kyle Shanahan had a mistake as big as this, not preparing his guys, not knowing the rules, that is absolutely a fireable offense, and it's a huge red flag for the future of the 49ers. Now you look at them, they've locked up a lot of their guys long term. And the big question heading into the game is, as much as Brock Purdy has been, in the MVP conversation this season, is he an elite quarterback? And I don't think that question got answered. I don't think that question got answered on Sunday. I think it just raised more questions because Brock Purdy played a great game. He didn't make mistakes, like we've said, and that's a huge part of being an elite NFL quarterback. Patrick Mahomes does not make mistakes. Simply put, he does not make mistakes, and that's what makes him so good. But having Brock Purdy do the same thing and it not being enough, and I understand it's against Mahomes and the Chiefs, which is a whole nother beast than any other player in any other team in the playoffs. We talked about their run, but the 49ers simply got outcoached by Andy Reid. Straight up. It wasn't the players' fault. They played incredible. Special teams were a little bit of an issue, but a blocked kick, I'm not going to give that to the fault of the 49ers. I'm going to give that to the benefit of the Kansas City Chiefs making that push and blocking that kick. I'm as much as that muffed punt that hit off the back of his foot is a huge mistake. It's not like it's not like the returner dropped the ball. It's one of those things where the return man's just wasn't paying attention, and that is a huge mistake by them. Probably the turning point in the game. That special teams, but the rest of that team played amazing. That defense played so good. And then there's questions. Are you going to re-sign Chase Young, who had a huge game? He played amazing in that Super Bowl, opposite of Nick Bosa. Who is going to, what are you going to do to improve? What are you going to do to make these changes to win the Super Bowl? Because the 49ers have been there. They've been to 2 of the last 4 Super Bowls. They've lost them both, but they've been to the NFC Championship game every other year. They have been such a juggernaut of a team. I mean, you look at their roster on paper compared to everyone else, it's far and away, and I mean far and away, the best roster in all of football. And yet they still cannot get over the hump. And I don't know if that's a Kyle Shanahan thing. He's not a coach that you can really fire for this. But it's leaving a legacy. We talk about legacies all the time, and it's hugely important. The Philadelphia Eagles of the early 2000s, reminiscent of this. They were incredibly successful with Andy Reid at coach, with Donovan McNabb and that incredible roster. And they never were able to win the big game. You talk about the Bills, 4 straight Super Bowls, 0-4 in those games. Where do the 49ers fit into this era, this era of this group of incredible teams that just couldn't get over the top? Are they in that conversation? How much longer is their Super Bowl window? You have Purdy on a great deal. You have him on his rookie deal for a long time, for a couple more years. But Trent Williams isn't getting any younger. We saw how big of a deal it is when he's not out there. Deebo Samuel continues to deal with some health issues. He fought through the pain to play after that hamstring injury where he couldn't put weight on his leg. George Kittle, not that young anymore. How many more years do these 49ers have? How many years can they keep this team together, keep it competitive? What is the difference that has to be made? Because right now, the difference between the 49ers and the Chiefs is that quarterback. It's not to say that Purdy is bad. It's not to say he isn't great. It's the elite quarterback play that Patrick Mahomes brings to the table, that if you need it, he will get it for you. And Purdy absolutely is capable of doing that. We've seen it time in, time out all season. He is a great quarterback. But is he an elite quarterback? We don't know. That is what the Super Bowl was supposed to answer. That is what this season was supposed to answer. And we just have to wait and see. If you have any other comments on the Super Bowl, feel free to leave some here in the chat. We'll take a look at it, talk it over a little bit with you. But thank you everybody so much for tuning in to this episode of Sports by GSMC. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to have a great show. Remember that if you would like to leave a tip, leave a donation, subscribe to the channel. The button's right there. Leave a like. In future episodes, remember, go to streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork/tip to get your question or comment on the screen in front of my eyes. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. You have a great rest of your night.